Hey, well, welcome, citizens. Hope you guys are well. Jeremy, how you doing? You're in a different city today. What's going on?
Doing good. Yeah, live from the Winnipeg studio. We are in different cities this week, so we thought we have to keep the show going, so we made it work. Here we are. It kind of looks like I'm on the same set. The guys have blended it, kind of same style, same looks.
The show goes on. I'm pointing to our sign.
It does not stop.
This is the first time we're not in the same room doing a show.
Yep.
So we'll see how we do.
Yep. There's lots to talk about. Crazy what's happening in the country. We are possibly sitting on a vote of non-confidence, which is wild.
Yep. We talked about this last week.
Yeah, it is, but it doesn't feel like it's going to happen. Jagmeet seems to be not supporting, but supporting, so there's lots to talk about there. Lots happening with Israel, Hezbollah. I would love to hear what people's comments are. If you're watching and you know people in Israel or Lebanon and what's happening over there, what's your guys' take on it? What's happening around the world? And we want to see. We always go to the comments. I always go and look at the comments and respond to people. So make sure you guys do that.
Yeah,
there is.
Let's talk about that.
A lot of changes happening. Yeah, for sure. Maybe we'll just jump into the whole vote.
Well, even if people don't know what's going on there, crazy with the pager bombs that were going off. You said all out war. You and I are going to touch on.
That's crazy, hey?
Yeah, it's
crazy.
That was like straight on out of a movie.
It is
that type of precision. If you think about it, intercepting. If you don't know what happened, is Israel intercepted a shipload of pagers, I believe, from somewhere on. Somewhere in Asia, probably China or Japan, and basically put inside of them small explosive devices that can be detonated. And they simultaneously detonated how many pagers that were on members of Hezbollah?
Yeah, crazy. And for those wondering why they have pagers in 2024, they use these type of special devices that aren't necessarily hackable or traceable. Yep. So it's very common for those types of devices to be around there. And so, yeah, they hacked them, put explosives, and then blew them all at the same time. So they were on people's hips, on their shirts, in their hands, and yeah.
Well, Israel is obviously on an offensive, call it a defensive offensive. For the point of defense is going on the offensive for people who want to eradicate or stop Israel.
Well, and they're fully at war now. Like once it all started what, on November last year? November, was that when it was? Or October?
Yep.
No, it was October.
It was October 7th.
October 7th last year. That declared full-fledged war, and they've been on at war together ever since. And so now they're
it continues on. So let's touch on that. Also, let's touch on Bill C-223, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But if you did not know, today is the second reading of a universal basic income in Canada. This is a bill presented by Leah Gazan of the NDP, and Jagmeet Singh was talking about this, so we'll get to that. Danielle Smith, what did she do? She did something interesting yesterday.
She just I posted this video today because I thought it was a great video to post. We're from Alberta, for those who don't know. Mm-hmm. That's where our studio is, and so she's our premier. And for her to post this video, it was she's essentially reinforcing the freedoms of Albertans to protect them from even more so like she even goes to reference what happened during COVID, how people were forced to take vaccinations and stuff. And she goes, no medical procedure will ever be forced on anybody at all by any legal, provincial or federal.
Yep.
And so she's just kind of bolstering down the freedoms of the Albertans. And so people are really getting behind it. And I think that's why Alberta's absolutely booming. Like completely, we have people coming in from everywhere. It's driving up costs, which is the unfortunate thing, is that we have such a boom that's causing our houses to go up because it's a supply and demand issue. But there's a reason why people seem to be moving here at a rate like nowhere else, is because it's the freest. It's arguably the freest place in North America is Alberta.
Well, Alberta, strong. It's a great place to live. We love it. Mm-hmm. So we'll touch on that because she wants to bolster the Bill of Rights. And I want to talk about Nenshi's comments, because if you didn't know, former mayor of Calgary, Naheed Nenshi, is now the party leader for the opposition, the NDP, here in Alberta. So he's obviously got his comments on what she's trying to do. And I guess there's a couple other things we will naturally get to as we do. Non-confidence vote. Should we start there?
Yeah, gosh, so frustrating.
So I think, maybe catch us up. What's going on as I kind of queue up this video here?
So last week, Jagmeet or was it last week, or was it further than that? I think it was almost 2 weeks ago, where Jagmeet came out and said, we are tearing up the agreement, and literally ripped a piece of paper, and he just said that on repeat. We're tearing up the agreement. What does that mean? Does that mean you're not supporting Liberals? We are tearing up the agreement. And it's like 56 times asking different questions. We're tearing up the agreement was his response back. And it's just exhausting to hear. And so obviously everybody's wondering, okay, so he won't answer any questions. He's saying tearing up the agreement. Does that mean he's actually going to support the Conservative Party in a vote of non-confidence? Everyone was skeptical of that. We're now seeing that he's not supporting the vote of non-confidence, which means even though he's tearing up the agreement, by saying, I don't support the Liberals, he's supporting the Liberals by not voting for the non-confidence. So when you listen to the reporters in this video you're going to show, they're asking, you're supporting them by not voting with Pierre. What are you doing? And he just goes on repeat to say this, and it's such a frustrating video, but it's worth watching. But so that's kind of where we're at. We're going with what a confusing thing. And he's being accused of doing all this to save his pension, because if he makes it to 2025 November, apparently he secures his pension, which is essentially his financial future as he ages, of course.
November 2025 or this year?
I thought, I don't know. Maybe I thought
we need to look up which
one
it is. If you know in the comments, let us know. But even the polls, Jeremy, in his...
Well, it's very hopeful then if that's true.
The polls in even where his riding is he is now second. He's not even leading. He can't afford to go to election because it looks like he might not even win his own seat back.
Interesting.
But the interesting thing about this, and you touched on it, is that it was a straight up stunt what he did 2 weeks ago, right before these by-elections that were held in Quebec and also in Winnipeg, where you are, right, where NDP maintained one of their seats, is that he was showing that he is leaving, or he's no longer going to be hanging with the Liberals, which was beneficial at the time. But it was just a stunt. We're ripping up this contract. We're ripping up our deal. Even Brian Lilly, we showed a clip of saying, you've said this like 9 times, Jagmeet Singh, but can you answer me this question? Are you confident? Do you have confidence in the current government? And he would not answer that question.
Yeah, I know.
So
Never.
now when you have
any questions.
Totally. Now when you have a vote of non-confidence coming up,
in the clip we're about to show, it is keep trying to talk about the vote of non-confidence, and watch what he does. Like for those watching, pay attention to what he's doing. He does not answer the question. He just goes on repeat like a broken record about Pierre, and we know what they do. They're going to make healthcare cuts, and then he goes after conservative provinces for privatizing healthcare. But what he's not saying, and this is what drives me nuts, is as I was listening to the whole thing, I'm going, he's demonizing private healthcare, but in Alberta, our experience is it's a dual system. You have the what's it called?
Universal
healthcare, free healthcare here, healthcare here that is fully accessible, but then you have privatized healthcare as well. So like I know people, actually, in fact, I've done it myself, where when you get through our traditional system of going to the hospital to get like some sort of CAT scan or CT scan for something you're trying to figure out, generally most people wait months and months and months to get these scans. And so if you want, here in Alberta, you can pay $500 to like $1,000 to get it the very next day. You can get the result, the exact same results, the very next day. And so I've done that. I've done that once or twice to get the results on something I was looking into, and it buys you peace of mind. Yes, I know people can't support it, but to have the dual system is incredible, because it means that actually my name, I pulled it out of the social program so that they didn't have to put me in there anymore, which bumps probably somebody else into a further position down the line. And also somebody made money. I paid taxes on it. Those tax dollars went into the system. Someone in their private business made money and made income and is going to pay taxes on that income. Like the dual system's brilliant. But he just trashes it here and makes it look like that Pierre wants to kill the whole healthcare system we currently have and go to a for-profit system.
He uses the word, he wants to tear it down brick by brick. This is just so you know, guys who are watching,
so
this
annoying.
is the definition of gaslighting. It is invoking fear. It is using something that's not really true to distract from what's really going on. That's what gaslighting is. And this is the definition. And side note, Jared, I'm not sure if you saw this, but our Prime Minister was on Stephen Colbert a couple days ago in America.
Yeah, I saw that.
And he made a comment to the audience saying, the United States would just be better off if it had universal free healthcare like Canada. And the crowd went wild. And hey, if you're an American and you're watching, I just want you to know, I know the term free is tossed around in Canada. It is not free. It is a massive piece of the taxes that we pay. And the reason why Jeremy mentioned him going to pay on the dual system, pay privately to get some work done, to get some work done. How much work are you getting done, Jerry? I just realized what I said. Anyways, but the point is that with Jeremy and others, like I've done this before with my wife as well, where you've pursued private, is because there are so many flaws in the Canadian healthcare system that, it might be accessible to all, which is definitely a pro. But the con is you might not get timely results that you need. We know people who have been basically given a death sentence and they can't get the help that they need within the time that they need. So there are issues with that. So here, I'll play the video.
We've had family members die because they don't get the appropriate scans. Like one of our aunties passed away.
It's not an exaggeration. You're spot on.
Yeah, she passed away. She was waiting for scans and died. It's no joke. My son was dealing with kidney issues, which we didn't even know what it was, and he had crazy pain. And we thought it was appendix. It was right here in his abdomen. Like 6-year-old boy in a ball in pain, going, "Dad, take me to the hospital." Like, children don't ask to go to hospitals until they're in some serious pain. Like, they're in fact mostly scared of it. I get to the hospital and they say it's a 26-hour wait in Emerge. What? 26 hours? Like. So then I just began scanning hospitals all around, and I contemplated driving across the border to the States. It's a 2-hour drive to the States. I was going to go to a hospital in the States. It's my son. It's awful. So let's get to that video. But
But the point is, there's the pros and cons of it. But then again, with Jagmeet Singh gaslighting and using that, Singh wants to tear it down. No. But anyways, here's a video. We'll play it from this point, starting about 6 minutes into his interview, just so you guys know.
Of Conservatives to cut the things that you need, or New Democrats who want to give you hope and relief?
But you could have that election now if you wanted, and you're continuing to support the Liberals. So how do you bring that choice to Canadians in the next election, which you could have if you just didn't vote with the Liberals right now?
We'll have an election, and when that election comes, we'll put that choice to Canadians, and we're going to continue to lay out the different choices.
So I'm not going to answer the question, but I'm going to go on a pre-planned statement here. Let's continue on, because he's legit not answering.
Wait a second. We're going to have an election. We know there's going to be an election some point in the future, at some point, forever, for all of time. Like, that's what he's meaning.
Thank you.
There's going to be one eventually.
Yep.
Sure. You did nothing for me with that response.
That new piece of information was incredibly helpful.
Exactly.
Right now, we're in the midst of a discussion around bringing in pharmacare. Conservatives want to cut pharmacare. They want to help out big pharma.
Gaslighting.
Yeah. Didn't talk about that. Thanks for that.
Pharmaceutical companies, we want to make sure people can afford their medication. So these are important choices that are in front of Canadians. But we're not going to play conservative games. We're not going to let Pierre Poilievre call the shots. We're absolutely not going to support conservative cuts. This is a conservative motion. We reject their cuts and we reject their motion.
When the NDP has its first supply day, will you consider moving a motion of non-confidence?
Our main focus has been in looking at what we do in this parliament. You can see from the beginning of both minority governments, we've been focused on what we can do to give people relief. That's been our vision. There will be an election, and when there's an election, there'll be a choice. New Democrats want to give Canadians hope and relief. The Conservatives want to cut the things that you need. They want to privatize our healthcare. They want you to have to pay out of pocket to see a doctor. They want you to have thousands of dollars of bills after you go through a surgery. That's what Conservatives are doing in Ontario. That's what Danielle Smith is doing. That's what Pierre Poilievre would do.
You know what? Pause it for a second, David. I commend the reporters here, because if it was me in the room, I would have been like, "You're not answering my question," and been like, just like yelling at him, like, "What are you doing, man?" Like, so their patience with him is just ridiculous. It feels like you're talking to a toddler who does not understand the words you're asking and just says what they want.
It must be defeating, knowing I'm going to ask a good question here, and I'm not going to get an answer from it. I wonder if it actually stop caring about the questions they ask because they know they're not going to get the response that they want.
Well, it's so silly, and I was saying this to you before. Can you imagine? Like, this is why I think Trump has such a big draw in the States, is because he doesn't do that garbage. He does not care what anyone thinks. He just says what's on his mind. And yes, of course, he says stupid crap all the time. Of course. I'm not saying I validate any of that, but what I'm saying is it's extremely refreshing for a politician to just say it like it is. If we had a Canadian politician who got up there and said, "Look, I get you're trying to get me to say, why am I not voting for this? I don't want to answer your question right now. We are working on a plan towards that. I cannot give you a response right now, but what I do know is I don't think Pierre is the best solution going forward." If he said that, I'd have a lot of respect for him. But he doesn't.
Truth
he just
goes
says
a long way, man.
Oh, for sure. Like, you would have a huge amount of respect. And even if they drilled those questions and you just kept saying, look, I've given you the best I can give you, you would see a human being who's actually trying to care for the country. Like, I was toying around with the idea, imagine if he admitted the whole pension thing. Look, guys, if you're in my position, I want a pension. I've worked my whole life. I have family and children, and I need it. So if I can sort out how to get a pension, I'm going to, absolutely. I have to take care of my family. I'm trying to figure out a way to not do it at the expense of Canadians. Can you imagine if he said that? Can you imagine? I bet you his polls would go up, where it's like, okay, this guy's not gaslighting us. He's telling us the truth. We can believe what he says. We don't like what he's saying, but I'll bet you every Canadian would probably do the same to protect their family's future. So you could kind of pull on the heartstrings of sympathy. You probably could. But the fact that he's just gaslighting and diverting and borderline lying because he's not telling the whole truth, you lose trust. You lose confidence in those types of politicians, and they make a bad name for Canadian politics. Like, it's brutal.
I think if Jagmeet was honest, I think it would sound a little bit more like this. Listen, guys, I really need this pension, and I'm going to continue to do it at Canadian taxpayers' expenses because you're paying my salary. I need to last. I'm going to continue to be a lapdog to the Liberal government, even though I pull stunts and ripping up things. I didn't really mean it, but I just need to get there. So if you guys can just work with me on this, and then we'll. Like, I think that's the proper way to go about it.
We should do a segment where we show a politician saying something, and then we translate it to what they're actually meaning, but not actually saying. That'd be the funniest thing ever. Because you're right. That's brilliant. But did you also see? You remember the clips that came out of him at some bougie hotel with like a Hermes bag or something? It was like a $35,000 bag with a watch that was like this, a Rolex watch that was like someone's yearly salary and this. And so he got a lot of criticism because people were like, what are you doing? Like, here you are talking about how you're the working class and you're building this, and yet he's wearing and holding with these bags and watches more than most people make in a year on his body as the NDP leader. Like, what are you doing?
The problem I have with a lot of what he's saying in the video, and obviously from the fact he is not answering the question. He is completely avoiding the question about the confidence that he himself started by claiming this 2 weeks ago, right? By apparently ripping up his deal. But the thing that bugs me quite a bit is the fact that he keeps on barely touching on issues. So he makes comments of Canadians aren't doing well or this or that, but then he exaggerates and lies about what another party wants to do. And then he proposes, we want to do this, but he never tells you the how. Like, it's always in the how. Like, I agree. I want people to have the access to the best healthcare that they can. I want people to be able to live and have a great life in Canada. But then you have to ask the question, how? And all the proposals that they have, if they tell you how they're going to do it, they usually just have a one-liner. But the how is incredibly important, because that's going to determine whether it's long-term or whether it's like a temporary fix to get votes, and it's actually not going to do anything for Canadians.
That's a really good point.
Let's play the rest of the video and see what happens. There's only about 20 seconds left. It's in French. I don't speak French. Do you speak French?
I don't. So I like to think I do, but I don't.
So there you go.
I went to French immersion growing up, and I should speak French, but I don't.
How'd that work out for you?
I spoke enough French to make it to grade 1.
So Mr. Singh is obviously, I call it a stunt from what it was 2 weeks ago, and now it's coming up to the vote of non-confidence. We predicted this, that there's going to be he's not going to vote in favor, that the Parliament is not in confidence of Prime Minister and the Liberal cabinet. So that's interesting. Turn of events. Kind of predictable.
The vote of non-confidence, I think, is going to happen anytime now, like within an hour or two. So we're going to throw those results up as soon as we get them to you, so that we can keep it relevant for you guys and know what's happening in the House. Yeah,
let's see what happens. What do you want to jump to next? Do you want to jump to UBI, or do you want to talk about Premier Danielle Smith?
No, let's go to UBI. That's huge. I actually need, the thing that's crazy to me, and again, this is something I want to do with this show, is be able to get content in front of the people so they know what's happening. You brought up the UBI thing, and I had not even heard of it. And you and I are extremely involved with incredible connections, people all around us building this show, and I still didn't hear about it at all, which that's the stuff that scares me, is something as big as UBI coming into our country. For those who don't know what UBI is, it's Universal Basic Income, which means a fancy way to say, depending on rules, a certain set amount of money that's non-negotiable that will be going to a certain set amount of people at the taxpayer's expense, which could be a huge load financially on the country, on taxpayers, and just exaggerating inflation. It's a big deal. It's a really, really big deal. And so the fact that something like this can just be pushed through to a second reading and you don't hear about it or see it anywhere. So something I'd like to do is almost have like a section in Citizen where we have current bills that are moving or being pushed and where people can click and grab them. But obviously we'll talk about anyone that we see, but this needs to be talked about. It's a really big deal.
Yep. So just so you guys know, this is called Bill C-223. Bill C-223, which was presented by Leah Gazan. I think I'm saying her name correctly. It is a framework of a guaranteed livable basic income for Canadians. And reasons why, and Jagmeet Singh tweeted about this morning, of people are going to the food bank. Food bank usage has skyrocketed in Canada. And then he poses the question, are you going to vote in favor for the well-being of Canadians? And you look at these things like it's harder for people to afford homes, for people to buy groceries, etc. So this is proposing that Canadians should get a guaranteed livable basic income, a universal basic income. So I'm interested to know, first off, before we start discussing things, Jeremy, what do you think of that? Should Canadians have a basic income, a guaranteed basic income? Should every Canadian be guaranteed a certain amount of money to live in Canada? And I got so many thoughts on that, but I want to know what you think. Let us know in the comments. Should they not? It's an important question to ask. And if you don't really know the implications, that's okay to say. Say, you know what, I really don't know the implications, or I don't know how we'll pay for this, or where does the money come from, or how do we manage universal basic income when we have living costs going up year over year over year? Does that mean the UBI goes up year over year? These are all important questions. So if you don't know, just put your thoughts in there.
I think it's a great question to talk through. I think philosophically, I don't believe in it from the most basic form being allowance in my household with my children.
Okay.
I will never hand them money for no reason whatsoever. I would help them with certain things that they want. If, hey, Dad, I'm going to a birthday party, I'm going to buy the gift. I'm their parent, of course. That's not the same idea. But to just give them, here's money. Next week, here's money. And they're having to not pull their weight on anything or do anything whatsoever. I've dug into this a bit and tried to look at what UBI is happening around the world. And something I've seen is their incentivized UBI or UBI ideas are kind of interesting. Like, for example, in, I think it's Poland. It might be Poland. I think it's Poland, where if you have, I think it's 3 or more kids, and it's possibly 4 kids. It's possibly 4 kids.
Yep.
You actually don't pay income tax. I was like, well, let's pump out these kids. Like, immediately I was like, well, that's, and the reason for that is they're incentivizing to try to get the birth rate up, to get more citizens, to keep maintaining their culture, to grow their economy generation over generation.
Yeah.
And so incentivizing certain financial kickbacks for certain things, I think can be pretty brilliant if you very, very carefully walk these things out. But generally, no, I don't think just handing out a check is going to solve anyone's real problems. Yes, we are in a financial crisis. Yes, housing is more expensive than ever. Yes, it would help some individuals. But it's not going to solve the entire process. In fact, we're going to exaggerate inflation even more so, because this will cost a small country like ours, 40 million people, it's going to cost us billions of dollars very quickly. And we're already paying billions of dollars. We've racked up more debt in Trudeau. He's officially doubled the debt since he's got into office.
Yeah.
So every prime minister that has come before him, if you total all of their debt, Justin Trudeau has doubled what they all have done. I don't know if you remember, but it wasn't long ago where you and I were somewhere, we're talking about how the fact that he's totaled all of their debt.
Yeah.
We are now in the realm of doubling that total. It's just unbelievable. And we had the Taxpayers Confederation expert on our show. I can't remember his name, and he was discussing the amount of interest we pay on it. Like as a small country like this, we can't afford to do these types of things at all. We have to be careful. We have to plan for the future. And so my very long-winded answer to you is I don't think it's a good idea, especially for a country our size, If there was very clear maybe restrictions or parameters given, I might be able to get behind it. But I'd love to see an economist wrestle, debate, and have multiple angles and see everybody talk it through. The fact that this is getting through without us knowing, that scares me.
Well, I posed some of the questions earlier that I think we all have to ask. First off, I want every Canadian to have opportunity to live a great life where they can send their kids to school, where they can get an education, where they can enjoy family, where they don't have to be worrying about how are they going to pay their rent or how am I going to get groceries, and have the dignity to be able to provide for themselves. I want that for every Canadian. And I think history has shown us, and if you just study basic economics as well, to be honest, is that, and look at the nations that have actually been able to change and decrease the amount of poverty over time, is that comes from basic principles of like finance 101, of not spending more than you make, of managing your money well, of and we put in the government case of allocating the tax dollars to proper things that is not end up having to tax the people more just to sustain. And when you're talking about how much debt we've racked up, it's because we are continuing to use money we don't have to build up a bloated bureaucracy and infrastructure that isn't sustainable. And adding something like this, and so when it's not sustainable, Jared, it also makes life more expensive for the average Canadian. So now with the proposal of universal basic income to help people for problems that have been caused by too much taxation, you're proposing a solution that now requires either more taxation or the existing amount of taxation that's already being done to be redistributed to people who don't have. And that just shows us, like, I am complete. I'd love to talk to someone and see if they can convince me otherwise, but I just know that when you have more taxation, that makes nations poorer and it makes people more poor over time. It's a temporary relief for people.
It makes business harder. It makes deals harder. It makes trade harder. It makes everything more difficult to be more successful, thus driving people to find places where there's less tax. It's just as simple as that. And this will only exaggerate that. I think, like, imagine this in your home scenario. Like, imagine husband and wife talking about finances, and let's pretend one of them are a bigger spender. Imagine if, like, actually, let's put Jagmeet Singh. Jagmeet Singh is the husband, and he's going, actually, let me pose this even better. Sorry, this is a little bit confusing, but I'll get it right. You're in a scenario where one spouse wants to make cuts because they're going, hey, we're overspending. And that's Pierre Poilievre. We're overspending. Jagmeet is essentially saying, all you want to do is cuts. We want to, all you care about is cuts. We believe in a UBI. We want to hand out more money. It's like, you're going bankrupt. You can't keep just using the credit card in your household forever. Like, yes, there's going to be a point in your household where you're going to have to make cuts.
Yep.
The conservative viewpoint philosophy is to cut back, because if you play the movie out, as we always say, play the movie out, look down the road. We can't keep going this way with debt. We've got to be much more vigilant and careful and encourage more business and reduce trade deals so that we can drive things to be local. We have minerals and all sorts of natural resources in Canada. Like, when you actually go in and look at what every province has to offer, it's incredible. We could be almost fully sustainable. We have oil at incredible rates. I've got a friend who works for an oil company, and he was talking about the amount of oil that we have right here, and everyone knows it, but it's too expensive to be able to pull it out like we do. So we import it. We bring in ships from Saudi Arabia. We bring in all over the place, where I'm like, it's all here. Like, why are we not getting it from here? But it's because we're not incentivizing business locally. It's too expensive to do business here in Canada. And so we tax more and we create more government programs. And it's just, government programs are good in small doses if they're managed properly. If we minimize tax as best we can, and you create a solid economy that can encourage the lower class, middle class, and upper class to bring business and to work hard.
And there's opportunity, locally. Right?
Yes.
You know what? Like, the universal basic income, in other words, in my opinion, is just wealth redistribution, which is a socialist, communist idea. And it just is not going to work long time. And I think you're going to end up bankrupting our nation by doing that. Like, imagine now, on top of all of the debt that we're already paying, we've talked about this in past shows with Martin Peltier and another one that you and I did about the tax, the debt burden that we have on Canadians and future generations. Is that now every Canadian is rocking a $40,000 salary minimum, right? And obviously I don't know all the ins and outs, but I'm assuming if you make money, you're not going to qualify for it. But now you add that as a tax burden on top of it. Is instead of $8 loaves of bread, we're going to be having $100 loaves of bread. Like,
and you're not exaggerating.
No,
this
that's
is
where you
very
get
real.
to.
You're very right.
So when you start having that, is that you think it's expensive now? Well, you're going to make life more expensive because this is just the nature of economics and how it works.
Well, and also think about the people that like our parents' age or anybody older than that. It's like those people who are no longer in their working years and are probably in retirement. They've saved a long time to have enough money to live, and they calculate that out. They're no longer able to work for new sources of income. So if they saved a couple $100,000 over the last number of years working their butts off to 65, and all of a sudden a loaf of bread is $50-$60, or let's just be a little bit more realistic, 16 bucks for a loaf of bread. It's like their plan for their future just got cut in half. They could maybe plan to be 20 years out, live out. Now they got 10. What are they going to do? Like, if we don't take care of inflation, you're killing the future of senior citizens.
Yep.
You're killing the ability for them to plan and live a life into their retirement. Their retirement is being squashed because of inflation, because of overspending, because of overtaxation. Like, these are big deals. Like, it has to be sorted out. We need business-minded people. Like, I don't know if you see Kevin O'Leary. He's been very active lately and really criticizing the current government a lot, but he's got a common sense approach. He's a businessman who understands how to make money and how things should work. I don't have a clip of his ready to go here, but
I saw the one you're talking about, because he's harping on fiscal irresponsibility.
Yes,
he can't stand the irresponsibility because that causes more and more problems. Like, in this show, really, we were set out at the beginning to talk about good ideas and bad ideas. We've used that a lot, and these type of things are bad ideas. They are band-aids. They appear to be a fix for people who are struggling, but when you dive and look under the covers, it is not a fix. It's going to actually make the wound worse for you. But it's this ideas that keep coming through that we have to be talking through. And like, so this, just not to put a cap on it, but Bill C-223. Also, I do want to mention, it is a private member's bill. So historically, not a high chance of being passed. Just want to throw that out there. I don't want to scare people into thinking that this is absolutely going through. It is in its second reading in the House. It is in its second reading already.
Which means it passed one vote.
Which means it passed the first reading, and there was revisions to go back.
But yeah, I was going to say, but does it? It has to get voted to move forward to make it to the second. I believe so.
I think
I could be wrong, but I believe that's the whole point of 1 versus 2.
And then I think typically it comes back for a third. Let's look into that and find out. Hey, if you're watching, let us know what that is, because I thought it was the other way, Jerry. I thought it was a first reading, then there's debate, and then they take it back for revisions. They come back and debate again. You know what, there might be a vote on each at the end.
I got it here. It says first reading introduction to the bill. The first reading is the initial step in a bill's progress through Parliament. The parliamentarian proposing the bill will introduce it in the parliamentary chamber. Although this step is called the first reading, the bill is not actually read out aloud in the chamber. It is made available for parliamentarians, for Canadians to read. So there's no vote. So it's actually into the second step right now, like you said, second reading. The second reading, during the second reading, parliamentarians debate the principle or the main idea of the bill. They examine its strengths and weaknesses. So if it makes it past this step, that's significant. That's what it looks like.
Okay.
They do vote. If the vote supports the bill is sent to a committee for a closer look. So this is where it gets voted.
Okay.
So it'd be very interesting to see what happens after this.
Yep. Okay, well, that's good to know. So at least you guys are aware. Let us know your thoughts on it, on universal basic income. Is that something that helps Canadians? Is it something that makes us worse off? Would love to know what you think. If we said something wrong, correct us.
You know what's interesting?
Let us know.
I'll say this last thing before we move on here. When we were wrestling with this, getting ready for the show, I was talking to ChatGPT about it. And so I said, ChatGPT, in your best knowledge, does universal basic income work? Has it shown to work in a great way of building an economy. So has history shown it to work in building an economy? And then it gave me UBI definition, and then it gave me 4 places where it's slightly been tried for 3 to 4 years, and just in Finland, in U.S. city pilot programs, but none of them were ever long-term ones. And so then it gave me a whole bunch of things about poverty reduction, economic stability, flexibility. And so then I just responded quickly after I read it, and I did not ask for a bunch of random stats or information. I said, give me in one sentence with the data you have, do you think UBI builds an economy? That's the question I'm just trying to see. Based on what you have inside your brain of AI, do you think? And it goes, universal basic income can provide short-term poverty relief, but it hasn't been proven to be sustainable to build or strengthen an economy at large at all. So, I was like, thank you. I just wanted to see what your quick response was. And so it was very interesting to see that, but also it seemed like it had a bend to try to prove to me that it was working. I'm going, I just want to see what's your stance on it. And it has never been successful at wide scale. That's at least what history tells us.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, Jerem, this is a good principle you and I have talked about quite a bit, but we know the quote, Rome wasn't built in a day. And when it comes to our personal finances, when it comes to how we live, when it comes to how a country thrives and a country builds, it's not built overnight, meaning there is no quick fix to all of a sudden make things good. What it comes by good policies, good ideas, day by day, acting on these principles that actually builds a foundation that we can get stronger and we've got a better future on every day. It works for you and I personally. It works for us as a country. And when we are too focused on, I just need a quick fix. I just need this now. I need my problem solved tomorrow. And we, if we think that way, we'll fall for bad ideas like this. But you have to realize, what is the long-term effect? You and I have said this a lot. Play the movie out. If you play this out, where does this lead us in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, this idea? Does it make life better or tougher for our kids? And that's something that we have to remember. And I think if we can get that principle in our head, that is going to help change our outlook on terms of what we have to do. I'm not going to get a magic fix overnight, but I can start changing my life by what I am doing every single day. And that's eventually going to see some great change in your life.
Absolutely. Somebody clip that. That was gold.
I'll take that from you. All right, want to move on to Premier Danielle Smith?
Yeah, I do.
You posted this first couple days ago, so why don't you explain? I have the clip queued up, but maybe give us some background.
Essentially, I don't know where it came out of. I don't know if she was responding to something, or maybe she's just responding to the overall climate of Canada and what's happening with over the last couple of years. But she posted this clip, and at first I was going, I didn't know what it was for at all. And so I just began to watch it and be like, she's bolstering down the freedoms of Albertans and trying to essentially guarantee that the future of an Albertan is free, that they have never going to be in a position where they get coerced to do any medical procedure. She even calls out, including vaccinations, where it's the medical decision of an individual and their autonomy to their body. And so I went looking through the comments, and obviously it's on the Conservative page, so these are generally Conservative followers on the page. And so flipping through it, and it seems like a great response to it. I would struggle to probably criticize it personally, because I think from a philosophical point of view, I agree with a lot of the principles she's talking about. So it'd be worth to watch. I think it's only 3 minutes long, but it's punchy and it's worth watching. I think
it's worth watching. And then just to preface it a little bit too, you have Naheed Nenshi, who is the leader of the NDP in Alberta. He said, why is she doing this? His take is that she is just playing to her base before leadership review. So tossing candy to a crowd is kind of what he's saying. I disagree with him, but just so you know the other side of what his criticism, we'll get to that in a moment, to his reaction as well. But here's the video.
My fellow Albertans, I have some exciting news to share with you today about an important step forward for our province in protecting the rights and freedoms that are central to our identity as Albertans. In a few weeks' time, our UCP government will be introducing legislation to amend and strengthen the Alberta Bill of Rights, a document that has stood as a safeguard for our civil liberties and freedoms for decades. Since its inception, the Alberta Bill of Rights has been a reflection of our shared values, recognizing the fundamental rights and freedoms that are essential to a free and democratic society. It enshrines the principles that every Albertan holds dear: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to equality before the law, among other fundamental rights. It serves much like a constitutional document in that it ensures all provincial laws and policies must align with those listed rights and freedoms. Now, the Bill of Rights has served its purpose well over the years, but as our society evolves, so too must our laws to ensure our rights and freedoms remain properly protected in an ever-changing world. One of the amendments we are making to the Bill of Rights is to reinforce the right of every Albertan to make their own choices regarding the medical treatments they receive. This includes ensuring that every individual in our province who has the mental capacity to do so will have the right to decide whether or not to receive a vaccination or other medical procedure. In recent years, we've seen the challenges and hardship that can arise when that right to bodily autonomy is not adequately protected. It is my firm conviction that no Albertan should ever be subjected or pressured into accepting a medical treatment without their full consent. For me, this addition to the Bill of Rights is about recognizing that in Alberta, we believe that individuals have the right to make informed decisions about their own bodies without fear of undue pressure or interference by government. The amended Bill of Rights will also strengthen property rights, another cornerstone of living in a free and democratic society. The amendments will ensure that no Albertan can be deprived of their property without due process of law and just compensation. This is a reaffirmation of your right to own and enjoy the property that you've worked so hard for. There will also be an amendment to make clear that in Alberta, we respect the right of individuals to legally acquire, keep, and safely use firearms. For many Albertans, firearms are critical to their livelihood and way of life. I personally feel that law-abiding firearms owners have been unfairly targeted by our federal government for decades, and it is my hope that these amendments will better protect the rights of our farmers, ranchers, hunters, and sport enthusiasts going forward. I'd like to share that in my view, these amendments to the Bill of Rights are not just legal changes. They are a reaffirmation of the values that make Alberta one of the freest jurisdictions on earth. They are about protecting our rights, our freedoms, and our way of life. We are sending a clear message that in Alberta, the rights of individuals are paramount and that government must respect those rights at every turn. As your Premier, it is my duty and my honor to stand up for your rights. I believe deeply in the principles of individual freedom and personal responsibility that have guided and built this province for generations. Thank you for your trust and commitment to the values that make Alberta the amazing province and beacon of freedom we have become in the world.
Okay. Thoughts? First reaction.
I'm proud to be an Albertan. I don't know. Like it's, I while watching that video, I was like, I would love to watch somebody criticize the video. Like, the only thing I think I know some of my far left leaning friends would say is the whole firearms thing, and they think guns are inherently evil, and I'm not exagerating. Which
let's talk about that in a second. Mm-hmm. We should talk about that.
But yeah, we should. Like, but it's. To me, no. I even liked how she postured it. It's very much about a way of life, about hunting, and about even sport shooting. We have a lot of friends who do sport shooting as well, long distance shooting. We could do a whole show about guns. I feel like you laws don't stop evil people from doing evil things. So like, it's anyway. I don't want to get all into that, but. All in all, I'm going, I don't know how someone could criticize this or disagree with a lot of what she's saying. It's common sense. It's great. It's freedom. I would love to see Nenchi's actual response. I don't know if you have that video
I do.
or not.
Not a video. It's a tweet, but I will read it.
Okay.
So This is Naheed Nenshi, leader of the NDP, commented yesterday. So this video, I believe, came out yesterday. Danielle Smith's comments today on YouTube about her proposed amendments to the Alberta Bill of Rights are nothing but desperate virtue signaling over issues that she thinks will help her leadership review. Canadians' fundamental human rights are protected by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and this or any provincial bill does not override this. I don't know if he remembers the fundamental rights and freedoms that
rewind
were
2 years ago.
Overrode
what are we talking about?
all through COVID, but thank you for
none of
coming
them
up.
were protected. Like they were completely overridden.
Remember bank accounts being frozen as well?
Yeah.
The Premier's constant playing to her base isn't just irritating. It has real consequences. For example, she's focused on people who refuse to get a vaccine. She is not focused on parents who want the best care for their kids or for those struggling with mental health and addiction who continue to lack access to critical services. Albertans aren't...
Okay, wait, hold on. Can I pause it right there?
Yep.
She didn't say stopping people from getting vaccinated.
Exactly.
So the people who feel like they want to get vaccinated, go get vaccinated. And let me add this next sentence, which is everything. If your vaccine is so good and it works for you so perfectly, then I shouldn't have to get vaccinated to save you.
Exactly.
If your vaccine works, it should protect you.
This is the
Basic
definition
logic.
of groupthink, dude.
Yes, for sure.
And even how he phrased it. People who refuse to get a vaccine. I actually think now the proof is in the pudding regarding the COVID vaccines, because you and I aren't anti, like they like to label everyone as anti-vax. We're talking about like the COVID vaccine and how much to use this word on purpose, evidence and proof is out there showing that this is not even a vaccine. I'm not sure if you saw this, Jer, but last week there was a group of doctors in Japan who did an emergency press conference because they felt they needed to warn people who got vaccinated by the COVID vaccine that their likelihood of sudden death has increased by a dramatic amount. And it was that important for them to let their people know that you need to be aware of this so that we can...
Is this real?
Yeah, I'll find the video, but I watched this 2 or 3 times, and it was a whole panel of a doctor board in Japan. I hope maybe someone can find that in the comments or look for it, but that came out because the conference was essentially that there is like a 3 or 4 times increased likelihood of sudden death because of COVID vaccines that were sent out. It's nuts. So anyways, let's keep going. So you can tell, just as he's accusing, this is the irony, just as double standard, as Nenshi is accusing Danielle Smith of playing to her base, he is playing to his base by how he's writing this. Even I just can't stand the condescension, to be honest. We're going to move on. Albertans aren't focused on these priorities, Premier. They care about the cost of groceries in a province where inflation is consistently over the national average. They care about decent jobs in a province with the highest unemployment outside of Atlantic Canada. They care about our crumbling healthcare and education system. We look forward to debating these priorities with you anytime, not hearing random announcements on pre-recorded videos. Can you sense the condescension in there and the arrogance too? I'm going to be a little critical. Like, I think Naheed is honestly a smart man. I think he's incredibly well spoken too. I think he's so misguided, and I think he has a lot of arrogance that comes through on that. And even things that he's blaming her for. They care about cost of groceries in a province where inflation is consistently over. He's making it sound like that's Danielle Smith's fault. If you've actually known what the Conservative governments, including the previous Premier, who followed the last NDP reign, which was run by Rachel Notley, who got us in an incredible amount of debt and chased business out of our province, the Conservatives have actually managed to turn around and actually do a net surplus for us as Albertans. Well,
even like, I don't know if you remember, I think it was Danielle Smith, where she blocked the carbon tax for gas to reduce the cost of gas, being one of the largest expenses for Albertans. And it was the NDP party in Manitoba that just followed suit. When Wab Kinew got voted in, that's one of the first things he did, block the carbon tax.
Wab has actually been a little bit impressive, I will say.
For sure, he's done some great stuff.
Yeah, and we'll give him a shout out in Manitoba's Premier.
But do you see what I'm saying, though, is that like, if you have a common sense approach to relieving financial stress on the civilians, you'll do common sense things. It's not a party-based decision. So like an NDP values tend to support very liberal values, similar to the Liberal Party's values.
Yep.
But when you're an MP and you're trying to relieve costs, that's what Alberta did. That's what Danielle Smith did. And now Wab Kinew is doing. So like, we're hurting, and it's coming from federal. And
exactly.
We're trying to help people.
Great point. Inflation is coming from the federal government and the overspending, and certain provinces are trying to counter it. Talked about not being able to get, then she claims that we've got the highest unemployment rate in Canada outside of Atlantic Canada. I don't know if that's true. Somebody should look that up. But if that is true, I do want to say is that Alberta, as we continually try to produce, look at the natural resources that we have, look at how effective and clean that we are amongst world leaders, is that we've always been a boom or bust economy, but there's been a lot of diversification lately. But if we didn't have a federal government that was stifling the resources that is built within Canada, listen, Eastern Canada does not even take the oil and gas that Alberta produces. All I'm saying is that is not a provincial problem. We have been trying to fight a federal government who has not been propping that up. So anyways.
I have the unemployment rates right here by province as of August 2024, so as of a couple weeks ago. So Newfoundland, number one with a 10.4% unemployment. PEI, 8.2% unemployment. Nova Scotia, 6.7%. New Brunswick, 6.5%. Quebec, 5.7%. Ontario, the largest province in our nation, 7.1%. Manitoba, 5.8%. Saskatchewan, 5.4%. Alberta, 7.7%. So that puts Alberta into fourth place. Actually, no, none of it, 11.1%. So we're like fifth or sixth if you actually take these totals. So there's some truth. There's some truth to it, but there's many provinces that are worse. So
there's one other thing I want to touch on too.
It's hard to equate that.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. When you have statements like that, it's okay. You need to discuss it a bit more. I would be interested in seeing a debate between both of them. I know. Anyways,
it makes me wonder how much of that's oil, even or our minerals.
I'd love to know.
But the average unemployment across the country is 6.6, and Alberta is 7.7.
Yep. So Naheed Nenshi claims Canadians' fundamental human rights are protected by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and this or any provincial bill does not override this. I think it's worth reading Section 1 of the Canadian Charter because our audience needs a reminder of this.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because as Stockwell Day said, this is essentially a get-out-of-jail-free card for the government. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in it subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. That's a bunch of words that essentially is a get-out-of-jail-free card if the government has things that they feel justifies to override your right as an individual in this country, which is a really interesting thing.
And there's no parameters given in that, which is very, very dangerous.
There's none. It's also worth bringing up, Jer. Section 33, which a lot of people might not know about, it is the notwithstanding clause. So when Naheed Nenshi goes ahead and says that this bill or any provincial bill does not stop federal, actually Section 33, which was put in ironically by Pierre Elliott Trudeau, it was basically put in by him as a concession because of, as they were doing the Bill of Rights for Canadians, it actually grants the provinces rights to be able to push back on federal jurisdiction or federal implementation to protect people in the province. Essentially, I'll put it this way, so I wrote down here, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms enshrines a number of individual rights considered to be essential for the preservation of human rights. Among these are freedom of religion, expression, right to life, liberty, security of the person, freedom from unreasonable search. So we know all these things, but to think that they're guaranteed, that they're inalienable and immutable, that assumption is actually wrong under the Charter. But the notwithstanding clause measurement, what it does is typically it's invoked where there's a controversial court ruling, but it provides a sanctified avenue by which provincial governments can override federal authority should a federal government overstep their jurisdictional reach. So by Danielle Smith actually saying these, putting an Alberta Bill of Rights, and I get what Naheed Nenshi is saying, but she made a point of saying this actually reflects our values and what we believe as Albertans. And I think it reinforces that for people who are like-minded, that Alberta will fight for your right on that, and they do have powers that they can withhold. So let's say the federal government, as they have been doing, you talked about guns, they've been clamping down on guns and removing guns and callbacks on gun owners. You can no longer buy, sell, or transfer handguns anymore, even if you have the right legal ways you've gone about it. Is that essentially what she is saying is that we will do what we can, and Section 33 helps with that, to push back when they overreach on your individual right as a citizen. So interesting.
That's actually pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I really didn't
I
know
did
that
some
at all.
digging late last night on this one just to find out after I saw you posted that. And I'm like, I got to learn just a little bit more about it. And that came in because as the Bill of Rights is coming in Canada by Pierre Elliott Trudeau, is that there was a lot of pushback from the provinces that they wanted not so much power consolidated within the federal government. Because you remember, the United States of America is a country, but they are a bunch of individual sovereign states that are united. Canada is different, but there is some similarities because we are sovereign provinces that are combined to make Canada. So you do have your rights and freedoms.
Well, and that's one thing that makes it, I think, Canada great, is that if you don't like a way a certain area is being run or led or managed or spending of tax dollars, you can kind of go to different spots and move accordingly. And like, it gives you choice, it gives you decision.
Yep.
If we take all the power away from the provinces and say everybody's the same, no matter what, we're taking away a key tenet of our country. And that's, I think, diversity of thinking and thought. And if people don't like it, people will start to leave, and then money will start to leave, and business will start to leave, and things would have to change. But that's not what's happening in Alberta. Alberta's booming. People are flocking to Alberta. It's crazy.
Yep.
Obviously, it's attractive. It's very, very attractive, and people are moving here in droves.
I believe it's the highest province of migration within the country, right? People migrating to Alberta.
I've heard that.
Provinces.
I haven't seen any stats on that, but I, I'd be curious.
I'm pretty sure that's true. I remember reading that. See if my memory holds up. The interesting thing on this, I generally am very happy that Danielle Smith is stating this. I think that it is important that people know that they have a government and a province that will fight for their property rights, which is great. That they will fight the fact that I love what I don't want to misquote him. Thomas Sowell has got some great content. If you don't know who Thomas Sowell is, you need to look up him as a thinker and as a philosopher.
Brilliant.
And a brilliant man. And it talks about the ideas of criminalizing guns and more gun control, how it doesn't actually have the effect that the people putting those in place believe and hope it does. And so I believe in the individual having the right to protect themselves. I believe in going about it the right way. I believe in going through the right licensing and being law-abiding citizens. But I believe that you do have the right to protect yourself. And I've heard this so many times, and I've got people in my family and people outside of that will say, yeah, but we don't need guns. That's never going to happen in Canada. You can't state that. That's just ignorant to state that, because it's happened in so many other countries, is that you as an individual do and need the right to protect yourself, even against your own government, even when it doesn't look like your government will do that. Is that we've seen governments change in different countries from one extreme to the next. And again, to quote Ronald Reagan, is that democracy is only one generation away from being lost. So those type of things are important for the individual to have. But what was the other one that Danielle Smith said?
Guns,
vaccination, the vaccination,
lands, and autonomy. Bodily autonomy,
which is brilliant. Like, you should never, like, people say, yeah, you weren't forced. No, but you were coerced throughout.
If someone's threatening your job, your livelihood, your food, your money, and your family,
forced.
That's being forced.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it comes down to, I think, absolutely having, like, withholding the bodily autonomy to make your own medical decisions without force, without being having to comply, without feeling the pressure to. Like, that is what most people felt. And I know more people than not that got the COVID vaccine, which, by the way, is not a vaccine. They got that vaccine because they felt the pressure to do it.
I just asked ChatGPT if what's Canada's criminal code or laws in regards to self-defense, and what are the standards you're allowed to defend yourself with. And this is something I think that is like in Canada, you can't shoot somebody. You can't use a gun for self-defense. It's only for hunting and for sport. But this is what I find to be such a ridiculous definition. There's three definitions. Reasonable perception. The person must reasonably believe that the force or the threat of force is being used against them or another person. 2, proportionality. The force used in defense must be no more than necessary to repel the attack or threat, which just seems so ridiculous. Excessive force can lead to criminal charges. So it's like, you're fighting for your life and someone's broken into your house and you're having to calculate, what kind of weapon does he have?
Totally.
I hope I've assessed every weapon he has. Maybe he has one in his back pocket. Nope, I haven't seen it yet. So I can't factor that into my reasonable force in my fight to save my family.
You're already at a disadvantage, right?
Oh, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Like, when it comes to defending my family, I'm eliminating the threat at all costs, no matter what. And I'll hire the best lawyer I can to save myself from not being in criminal charge. But I'm protecting my family, even if it means I go to jail. I will save my family. And so would every father they could, or every parent. What a silly thing to put in. Immediacy, it says, the defensive action must be in response to an imminent threat, meaning it cannot be preemptive or reaction. I don't know what that word is. Retaliatory. Of course, that goes without saying, but of course, I guess they have to say it. But it's just so silly. Like, again, what a ridiculous thing to put in there. It's like, ugh, it drives me nuts.
But you know what, though? Like, even with Naheed Nenshi criticizing Danielle Smith for playing to her base, every party does this. Because it's the base that actually put her in power as premier. And doing these things which represent a lot of Albertans, they do agree with that. And also
he actually didn't criticize the ideas. If the ideas, if he really thought the ideas were so bad, he could have actually ripped them to pieces right there. He should have. But they're not bad ideas.
Premier's constant playing to her base isn't just irritating, it has real consequences. I guess everyone does the playing to the base. And then you're right, she the only thing he criticized is not focusing on what he wants to focus on, right? Saying she's not focusing on healthcare and addiction issues. But you know what? All I want to say, like you said, in my opinion, kudos to Danielle Smith for doing that. I think it's an important move. I think it's a big move. I think that it represents not obviously everyone, but a lot of Albertans. And what's more important for me is the right of the individual, which overall means bigger citizens, smaller government. That ideally is, I think, the direction. No, I think it's the direction that I think we need to continue to go. So, anyways, anything else on that?
Nope. I think that's everything there. Like those are all really big things, and I want to encourage people to like dive in, dig deep, respond. Let us know your thoughts, what you're seeing. Like I have some friends of mine that are very, very involved in their school boards and their voting processes, and they're kind of encouraging me, get on some of these boards, get involved, get in there. And so now I'm looking into it. Okay, how can I get to some of these meetings? How can I get to these places where they write policy? And it's honestly, you can change policy. You can go there, have a seat at the table, have your name on the paper as a vote in the process to vote yay or nay against these policies that are presented. But the only way that these policies actually come forward is if you're there to vote on it. And so whoever's there has all the power to bring policies that will come forth in our province.
Yep.
So you need to get there. You need to get involved. You have to get on these boards, and you have to be there to vote for policy, good or bad. And if you're not, you're giving the vote to somebody else. And it's not talked about enough, actually. I don't think people understand the process that they can be involved in. You can have a very serious level of say in what happens here, wherever you live.
You know what? Totally agree with that. Get involved. Continue to find out what boards and what meetings you can show up to. Even when it comes to, even if you are affiliated with a political party, go to the events that they have. Go speak up, ask questions, challenge your own government. Like we mentioned this before, is that we've talked a lot about fiscal irresponsibility. We've talked about policies that aren't good. Is that if there even was a different government, whether it was the Conservatives or the NDP in power, and they had bad ideas, we would be asking tough questions and criticizing bad ideas, because ultimately we want good ideas to be at the top, because we know good ideas is what's going to help continue to propel our country forward and propel citizens forward on good ideas. So I think it comes down to, if you can not think in tribalistic ways of what's my party and just toe the party line. No, think in the ideas of what is good ideas and what are bad ideas. And I'm going to challenge the bad ideas, and I'm going to rejoice, and I'm going to push forward good ideas. I think if every Canadian can do that, we would see a different country pretty quick.
And the day where politicians talk that way and do that will be a new day, man. Like I dream of a day where politicians actually go against their party's policies, or at least say, hey, I'm not fully persuaded on this. I think we need to iron this out. It's not a great idea. We need to, imagine if a politician went against his own party. It talks about that pushes towards loyalty of the country instead of the party. Like,
that's such a good thought. We should do a whole episode on that. Loyalty to the country over loyalty to the party.
Yes,
because there's so much self-preservation worked in. And
that's all it is. It's all self-preservation. It's my job, my salary, my future, my pension. and they're not loyal to actually try to get the best country possible. And that's what we need. That's what we have to talk about. That's what we have to, I don't know how to fully get it, but that's why we keep going down the same road of good ideas and bad ideas. Because if we can get to a place where we acknowledge this is a bad idea, we have to stop this. And then a premier or a prime minister gets in front of them and goes, this is a bad idea. And yes, my party brought it up. We're going to ourselves. I can't even imagine that. It's hard to even think about somebody going against their policy that their own party made. But man, there'll come a day. There's going to become a person that will put the country first someday, and I'm looking forward to that.
I think you just came up with a new slogan for the show. Loyalty to country over loyalty to party. We got to use that somewhere.
That's huge. Let's get a t-shirt.
Let's get stickers. Lunchbox for the kids to bring to school. All right. Well, I think we touched on everything we wanted to touch on today. Keep in mind, you guys, watch out for the vote of non-confidence, as that's probably coming through. We talked about the bill regarding UBI, Universal Basic Income, Premier Smith and her changes, and then she's critiques of that. Lots of interesting things going on in the country. So stay tuned with what's coming up. We got more coming your way. Any last words, Jer?
Solid show. I think lots of great things covered here. I'd love to hear everybody's comments. Like, follow, subscribe, wherever you're watching. It makes such a difference when you share this out. I was talking to David. We are in the early days of this show, and everybody I bump into it who's seen it goes, man, like, thank you for doing this show. We're so glad that you can do this, and you're resourcing us and giving us the summaries of these things. That's the whole point. But we also really want to know what you're concerned about, what's happening in your world. Write in the comments below. And we're going to be doing a live show coming up soon. We really love the live shows when we were able to interact with people. But we can only interact with you if you're here, if you're joining us for the ride. So always stay plugged in, always share, and send it to your friends and let them know. Even if if there's a friend that you're debating with, and I know you are, we all have friends that we're constantly wrestling with political conversations with. Send it to them. Go, hey, tell me your thoughts on this. Please do.
Totally.
And tell them to comment and let them spar with us. I'd love to. It'd be great.
Right on, guys. We'll see you next time. Remember to like, follow, subscribe. We appreciate all the support and the love. We'll see you guys next week.